This podcast is brought to you by Flipper, a marketplace to buy and sell websites, stores, and digital real estate. Plot your own path. Become a boss by buying a small online business at Flipper. Simply visit flipper.com/techtalks for a free consultation and 50% off fees. That's FLIPPA, flipper.com/techtalks. If you do visit, let me know how you get on. But now, let's get the show started.
Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, from contact tracing to four-legged drone delivery devices, trying to discover what the most effective new normal is going to look like in a post-COVID world involves a significant degree of new artificial intelligence applications that most companies and consumers are largely unfamiliar with, and in many cases, even fear. So the question I want to explore today is how can users and hyperscalers alike better understand new designs of artificial intelligence and machine learning in a way that society can implement the best practices to come out of the pandemic unscathed. Now, fortunately, a company called MyPlanet has been working behind the scenes on that very task for years. And over the past decade, MyPlanet's team of mastermind developers have been on the heels of various cutting-edge AI solutions for a range of Fortune 500 companies and big names such as Uber, Google, Delta, New Balance, SoftBank, Salesforce, and many, many more. Now, Jason Cottrell, he's the CEO and co-founder of MyPlanet, is joining me today to give an in-depth look on the numerous projects that MyPlanet has already taken hand in developing. And Jason is also going to be sharing the importance of normalizing AI technology to solve some of the world's biggest issues and how much of the existing technology that we're familiar with is actually exactly the same as what some consumers fear. But enough from me. Let's get Jason onto the podcast now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So my name's Jason Cottrell. I'm CEO at a company called MyPlanet. We help large organizations all around the world develop very complex experiences around technology. In particular, we've made a calling card for ourselves related to how you embed emerging forms of automation. So whether that's software or physical, into these experiences.
And one of the reasons I'm excited to get you on the podcast today is we're all surrounded by 24-hour rolling news channels, and there does seem to be a lot of fear being attached to emerging technologies at the moment, and a lot of worst-case scenarios and predictions being reported as fact. But can you tell me a little bit more about how you're counteracting all that by actually highlighting the importance of normalizing AI technology to solve some of the world's biggest issues?
Absolutely. I mean, we spend a lot of time on that is if we've got this technology, no one wants to use it, then we've got a problem. What a waste. So we've noticed over the last decade, there was often a disconnect between, what the technology was ready to do, what it, truly was capable of, whether there was anything or nothing at all to fear. And so we commissioned a study where we've been looking at 35 different types of automation. So both robotic or towards software automation as well. So think towards chatbots and Alexa and trying to really dig into why, but more importantly, we're running this as a longitudinal study so we can see how attitudes are shifting. Because what we weren't ready for a decade ago, all of a sudden is normal today. And so, we found some really interesting trends as part of that, but I'll summarize it in brief. From a tasks perspective, overall, very ready for that as a society. Tasks, especially those we don't value. So think towards, let's maybe use a car analogy. Let's think towards automated cruise control. So going beyond just, simple mechanics, but actually looking, say, at lane follow or looking at distance to the vehicle in front of us. And in many cases, those are being done now using machine learning under the hood. When we get into the second category, we'll call it more complex tasks. There often is still some disbelief if it's presented that way, especially if someone hasn't been exposed. We also see some interesting results here when things have maybe been demonized or discussed in the media shown negatively in popular fiction, kind of sci-fi. And then there's definitely a third category, and this is really clear across every type of automation we study. Things that start to get almost human. We really in North America do not like our automation to seem like it's human. So things that start to look human, humanoid, things that start to sound human, things that even just take on tasks that we almost think of as part of our human identity. So results actually related to driving and nursing, for example. There's a real struggle with that in these studies. So we try to guide our customers on how to reposition these where you need to actually expose many of these services first as collections of tasks. Smart brands approach it that way, then start to build up towards use, familiarity, and it can really take a decade or two for people to start to become more comfortable with then using some of these more advanced forms of automation in a very complex way.
And one of the things I love doing on this podcast, Jason, is busting a few myths. So with that in mind, can you tell me a little bit more about how much of the existing technology that we're all familiar with is actually the exact same as what consumers sometimes fear?
Sure. You know what? A couple of great examples. So if we see AI targeted smart ads, for example, ranks very low in our study. Not only low comfort, but high discomfort. Like what are you doing? How are you studying me? Where's the data going? There's a lot of questions, and in many cases, very legitimate. It's very interesting then, we look at a parallel where it's actually a use case that's using the same technology, but for consumer benefit. So if we look at self-checkout in grocery stores, we're all familiar. There's more and more self-checkout kiosks becoming available. Those rank midway. When we actually test around cashless grocery checkout, so think towards what Amazon's been doing in some of its most recent retail pilots, where it's a collection of cameras, sensors, actually tracking you throughout the store, seeing the products you've picked up, understanding it's you from when you've walked in, and actually tracking all of your movements. All of those elements, it's interesting, it uses many of the same underlying pieces of technology. It touches on payments and transaction security, identity, cameras, facial recognition, and tracking. It tracks on a number of the same things, except checkoutless grocery or checkoutless retail actually ranks exceptionally well. So just presented differently, presented with a benefit. Interestingly enough, it becomes far more palatable and definitely touching on a thing that we don't value. We don't like standing in lines as a society here in North America.
So how can users and hyperscalers alike better understand new designs of artificial intelligence and machine learning in a way that society can implement those best practices to come out of the pandemic unscathed? Because it's such a big question, but is there any way you can expand on that for me?
Absolutely. So we actually tried to codify this in an actual design pattern library. So we found that there was a lot of talk about AI. There's lots of talk about design systems and design theory, but nobody had really sat down and covered what are specific design patterns that you can use to address the inclusion of different types of machine learning into software or experiences. So we have actually published that online. It's free for anyone, smarterpatterns.com. And that actually touches very explicitly on how to bring AI into the design of a product or experience.
And can you also tell me a little bit more about how over the last decade, Myplanet's team of mastermind developers have actually been on the heels of various cutting-edge AI solutions for a range of Fortune 500 companies? Because I think very often we hear all about the latest new tech solutions and what might happen in the future, but all this is happening now for some of the biggest companies and all those household names. I think it's so valuable.
Absolutely. And you know what I love about my job, we usually get to work, behind the scenes, just as the technology is coming into readiness. So, if I look at a lot of the work going back with Alexa in the workplace or with Google's assistant team and a lot of the work done around kind of conversational AI over the last 5 years, we were very fortunate to put that in practice for Google, both as a customer as well as for a number of their branded customers. You see wearables like North, where we've been able to work very actively on some of their use cases, especially kind of social and multi-user use cases. And then for large organizations, partnering with IBM around how to do drones for kind of farm and infrastructure survey. So drones plus machine learning or machine vision. or for one of our largest athletic retail customers, how to actually go all the way from not just a wearable, but to actual guided coaching using machine learning. So we really like to take some of these experiences we have every day and ask not just how can we make them simpler, but how can we rethink them if there's a different type of logic or a different type of kind of assistive or agentive function that can be layered into them. I really love it.
I've had countless emails from listeners over the last few weeks talking about their fears and concerns around job security, while also seeing their interest rates on their savings drop considerably. And as a result, many are beginning to look at how they can invest in their future in an uncertain time. Could digital assets be the answer? Now, you might remember that I spoke to Blake Hutchinson, CEO at Flipper, on episode 1194 about how to buy digital assets and websites. In a nutshell, Flipper is a marketplace that you can buy and sell websites, stores, and digital real estate that are just ready to go. So if you do have dreams of running your own successful online business, or perhaps you're looking to exit your existing online business, my friends at Flipper can help you buy and sell. So if you're interested and want to find out more, please visit flipper.com/techtalks. That's FLIPPA.com/techtalks for a free consultation and also 50% off all fees. But now, back to the interview. So if we were to take one problem, maybe a problem that we're all familiar with, the dreaded COVID-19, there's no escape from it at the moment. Can you tell me how you're leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning to actually help curb the pandemic?
It's a great question, and we've studied this a fair bit over the last few months. And I have to admit, the interesting thing is that you don't actually have to go all that far when it comes to AI ML. In fact, a lot of the solutions are really just routed into devices, physical space, connectivity, Bluetooth connectivity, and protocols. The trick with at least the reactive elements around this contact tracing, you actually need something that can run very simply on phones at an operating system level. You're probably not looking towards AI and ML for that. You can, I think, over time start to use some of the data sets being produced for better forecasting, kind of earlier monitoring. Where we do see some interesting use cases is using conversational AI, using dynamic notifications, especially for occupancy awareness, physical proximity compliance. So actually acting proactively on behalf of people, on behalf of users, to protect them from risk, and in a much more guided way. For example, we've got a group in our ventures lab where they're focused on how we can use wearable and monitoring to help protect first responders. So looking at fatigue and other activity patterns proactively, and using kind of ML not only to detect trends, but also then to actually determine when and how to notify. So we found some very interesting use cases getting into the proactive pieces.
And the world has, of course, changed dramatically over the last few months. And at the beginning of the year in 2020, we were all thinking about the start of a new year, a new decade, and all the opportunities. Then we've gone through the whole lockdown journey. And as that lockdown begins to lift, I've been speaking to more and more businesses that are saying that they don't want to lose momentum and want to embrace new working methods, etc., by leveraging technology. But I'm curious, are there any trends in the kind of conversations that big brands are coming to you and asking for your help with?
You know what? We've seen a big shift this year in the trend towards physical space. So consideration of ambient and immersive computing. There's a lot of things that have been coming on the market where they've been connected, but the use cases really aren't solved for yet, or there aren't just those hero or kind of killer apps. So we've seen a real spark amongst our customer base, really thinking across the breadth of their experience, that omni-channel or cross-channel experience, thinking about how this is going to impact their workers when they come back to work, whether that's a corporate office or a distribution facility or a retail store, how it's going to impact customers, right? So if we think some of our grocery retail customers, how are they beginning to develop new experiences to flow customers through stores? And the most progressive ones are thinking, of course, beyond COVID-19. They're thinking about how will this lead to acceptance of new types of services and experiences that actually enhance a brand. So I'm pretty excited for that. I think that there's a lot of, if I sit with my optimist hat on, there's a chance for these technologies to play a role in helping us adapt in the short term, but ideally actually thrive on the far side of this, where it forces us to innovate and kind of play with this mixture of digital and physical space in a way that we didn't have the same pressures on us to do that before.
And before you came on to today, I did do a bit of research on the kind of thing that you're doing. And what immediately shined for me is just, I love how you're building solutions across multiple industries in multiple areas as well, such as fitness tracking, appointment scheduling, contact tracing, banking, customized airport travel, and so much more. But if we zoom out from absolutely everything, the world is changing and evolving before our eyes, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, I always like to say that change seems very slow when you're in it, and we're here day to day and we're tracking it month by month. But you zoom out to 5-year and 10-year increments, and it's incredible what happens. I think we sometimes forget it wasn't all that long ago that the smartphone was introduced, and that catalyzed a service like an Uber to actually be possible. So I get pretty excited by just how quick things are changing right now. And there definitely is not only a ton of capability coming to market in terms of technology and automation across a variety of form factors, far beyond the computers and phones we're used to right now. I get really excited for how those are going to stitch together over the coming decade.
And speaking of how those things all stitch together in the future, what is it that excites you about the road ahead? Could you possibly leave everyone listening with a bit of good news and a bit of a vision of how things you would see transpiring over the next few years?
Absolutely. One of the things that actually ranked, for everything that ranked poorly in our study, there were others that ranked surprisingly well. And, we saw that in particular, AR, especially AR on a smartphone perspective, has ranked very, very well. Consumers are more and more ready for it, AR even from a smart glass perspective. And the interesting thing is we're actually seeing a readiness in the technology to cover certain core use cases. So think back to where Apple Watch was, right? Going back 5-10 years ago. And so, that readiness to introduce. So I get really excited because that use case also starts to unlock so much more potential around other forms of ambient and immersive computing. It starts to unlock more about the sensors getting embedded in the world around us, sensors that are dealing with tasks and services in our health. So I get really excited for how all these are going to stitch together, how voice, chat, conversational AI will start to control them. It's a very exciting time to be us, and I think a very exciting time for those who can think forward and see what might be possible here.
Well, another thing that I love about what you guys are doing here is how you're embracing it and seeing the art of the possible and turning challenges into opportunities. And for anyone that wants to continue to follow your progress and see some of the kind of great work that you're doing and what you're working on and where you're heading, can you just remind them of where they can find you online and also contact your team if they are left with any questions?
Of course. Our website is at myplanet, myplanet.com. And you can go there not only to see some of the great work that our team does, but also to get a copy of some of the study and insights that I've been talking about today.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head a few moments ago when you said that you can just see and sense that readiness, not only to introduce new technologies, but to embrace them as well. And it's when they all begin to converge, that's when we see all those opportunities arise. So I completely agree with you. It's an incredibly exciting few years ahead. But more than anything, just a big thank you for taking the time to come on here and helping us all to just buy into and see that vision a little bit more clearly. So thanks for joining me today, Jason.
My pleasure, Neil. Thank you so much for having me.
Some of the key initiatives MyPlanet has created and is currently developing include contact tracing. They're working with leading tech hyperscalers to design contact tracing to ensure a seamless post-COVID transition while also keeping consumer security in mind. But it's when you look beyond that at things like customized airport travel and the work that they're doing with Delta, and also AI-based appointment scheduling, where Google has been working with MyPlanet to assist in the development of Google Duplex. And even things like fitness tracking, where they're collaborating with New Balance to create this hybrid application called MyNB, which turns New Balance from just a pair of sneakers to wearable tech. There's just so much value in the work that they're doing here. So I do urge anyone listening that is interested in finding out more about how they're transforming businesses and brands in multiple industries. I urge you to check them out. But if you do, like I said, there is so much cool stuff going on there. So please check them out. Let me know your thoughts. I am the easiest guy to find online, and I am available for chat, laughs, and maybe even bar mitzvahs. But if you would sooner just say hello and share your opinions on what you've heard today, that's cool too. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Neil C. Hughes. You should know that by now. And of course, my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. But that's it for now, I'm afraid. I will return tomorrow, but more than anything, just a genuine warm thank you from me for choosing to listen to this podcast every day. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.